Okay, we are finally back home. We're learning the Nishmas Mindel Mariam Bas Kalman Ruvain. I look forward to tomorrow's share being in person. I left off on Ayin Hey Amud Beis at the Mishnah towards the bottom of the Amud, and we're going to go through Ayin Hey Amud Beis and Ayin Vav, and get almost to the end of the parak. So here we go. V'od klal acher amru. So we just finished unpacking the first Mishnah of this parak, and now we have the second klal, the second principle. What is that? And here we're going to talk about carrying. We're going to start with the laws of carrying. We're really going to go through all 39 malachos, not in this Mishnah, but now that we listed the 39 malachos and gave some general principles, we're going to unpack each one of these malachos, but we're going to start with the last one, which is carrying from domain to domain, and we're going to go into the measurements of what measurement is would make someone liable for carrying. So this is the principle. Kol kosher latzniya, anything that's fit to store, meaning it's an item that people store, okay? Umatzniya kamahu, and people store this quantity of things. So for example, let's say you have, a spice. If someone has let's say salt. So if you have 2 granules of salt, no one's gonna put it away, right? No one's gonna put it away because it's just 2 granules of salt. If you have a lot of salt, you're gonna keep it, right? So it has to be in a quantity that people are actually gonna put away. Then you took, A, it's an item which people keep. B, you took the quantity that people keep, and then you carried it on Shabbos, chayv chatas lav, you be chayv a chatas for it. Something which is not fit to store. Or if people do store it, but they store it in a larger quantity and you have a smaller quantity, and you took it out on Shabbos, the only person who is liable is someone who would otherwise be putting this thing away. In other words, if the normal person, quote unquote, who does not put this thing away, they will not be liable. But if someone happens to be someone who, let's say, they are very makbid, they're very careful to save every granule of salt, okay? That's their thing. So that person, if they go ahead and carry the salt out, they are going to be liable. Okay, says the Mishnah, says the Gemara, what does it mean what's it coming to exclude when it says whatever is fit to store? What things are not fit to store? So we're going to have 2 examples. It comes to exclude menstrual blood, period blood that has no use. Okay, mar ukva amar. Okay, meaning someone bled and they bled into some pad or whatever it is. So that's something which no one's going to store, okay? It comes to exclude the wood of an Asherah tree. An Asherah tree is avodah zara, and therefore you're not allowed to benefit from it in any way, so that's something which people do not keep it. So it says the Gemara, Manda Amar Damnida Kol Shkenat Asherah, the one who says that blood, dam nida, is not fit to store, for sure, wood of Asherah tree is certainly not fit to store. The one who said Ati Asherah, maybe it's specifically Ati Asherah, the avodah zara, val dam nida matna le l'shunra, people do keep blood, but apparently cats would eat blood. In the Babylonian world, I don't think we do that anymore. Probably not a good idea. But cats would eat blood, and therefore, it could be that it does have a purpose, and therefore we can't say it's this thing is senseless, there's no purpose, and I know this thing does have a purpose. Okay. The idach, why does the other opinion, why does your papa say, that blood is never stored? Since a person becomes weak when the blood is eaten by a cat. So apparently, it's a mystical thing over here that when a cat goes ahead and eats the blood, even though it's good for the cat, it's not good for the person whose blood is being eaten for some mystical reason. Therefore, it causes the person to be weak. Therefore, although technically a cat could eat blood, no one's going to do this. Okay, let's go further. This Mishnah, which this Mishnah and the rulings of the Mishnah do not fit like Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon, because according to Rav Shimon, these shiurim are only for those who actually store them. What that means is as follows. Our Mishnah said that as long as it's normal for a person to store this item, and it's normal for a person to store this amount, that anyone who takes it out is going to be liable. So let's give an example. Let's say salt. Okay, so granule of salt, no one's storing. Let's say, but people are storing a fistful of salt. That's like a normal amount that you want to just throw out, they put back into the salt shaker, right? But let's say you're very wealthy. You're not going to do that. A fistful of salt, whatever, right? Our Mishnah says that as long as it's normal, meaning that you and I, regular people, store it, then even if you're very wealthy, you're also going to be liable if you carry that amount of salt. Rav Shimon says no. It's very subjective. If you're the type of person to take out that amount, then you're going to be chayiv. If you're not that type of person, you are not going to be chayiv. Okay. Now, Mishnah also said, something which is not fit to store, only the person who stores it, only that person is going to be chayiv, right? We said that if a person goes ahead and keeps 2 granules of salt. They're the type of person who stores 2 granules of salt. If they go ahead and put that salt and carry that salt, they're going to be chayiv. However, this Mishnah does not go like Rabbi Lazar. All right, this is not go. It's not going like Rav Elazar. Rav Elazar had look Rav Shimon ben Elazar. Excuse me. Rav Elazar says it's not go like Rav Shimon ben Elazar. It's Tanya Kol Rav Shimon ben Elazar. Kol she'ena kasher latzniya ve'im atzniya kamahu. Anything which is not fit to store or people don't store. V'huchsher lezev atzniya. But one person went ahead, meaning I'm this weird guy who keeps like 3 granules of salt. Someone went into my closet and took those 3 granules of salt out. Then you who took it out of my closet, you're going to be chayav, right? Our Mishnah said no. Only the strange person who keeps a very small amount, that's the person who's going to be liable. According to Rav Shimon Elazar, once someone stores it and you go and take it out of their storage, you're also going to be chayav in that case. Okay, fine. New Mishnah. Our Mishnah over here now gives the shiurim, the measurements for carrying different items, okay? Based on what their typical function is. Hamotzi teven, someone who carries straw, kimlo fifara. It's the amount that feeds a cow's mouth, okay? Because they typically feed straw for a cow. Eitzah, we'll see what eitzah is. Kimlo fi gamal. Basically, it's camel food. We'll see exactly what it is, as much as what would fill a camel's mouth. Less than that is not valuable, and therefore you'll not be chayav for it. Amir, straw. This is not unprocessed straw. Kimlo fi tala, that's to fill a lamb's mouth. Asafim, grass. Kimlo fi gedit, to fill a kid's mouth. Ali shum vali b'tzalim, leaves of garlic and leaves of onion. Lachim kigo graris, if they're fresh, it's the equivalent of a dried fig. Yuveshim kimlo fi gedi, if it's dry, as much as a kid's mouthful. Okay, so bottom line is, again, these things, they're going to be the measurements according to what people typically use these things for. And these different things do not combine to one another. They do not combine for one another because they are not alike in their measurements. Okay, we'll see what that last line means in the Gemara. My Eitzah. The Gemara asks, what is Eitzah? Amar Yehuda Teven Shel Mini Kitnios. It's straw of various types of beans. Okay, this is basically food that they would feed camels. It's straw of various types of beans. Amar Hamotzi Teven Kimlo Fifar Legama. Let's say a person goes out, takes straw, as much straw as would fit as a cow's mouth, but they do it for a camel. So you have a camel, and you take the amount of straw needed for a cow, right? So straw. Right, so Rabbi Yochanan Amar Chayiv, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Amar Pachas Machlokas. One said Rabbi Yochanan says you're chayiv in that case, even though you didn't take the measurement you needed for your camel, excuse me, because you took the amount needed for a camel. Sorry, you took the amount needed for a cow for a camel, right? So you have a camel, and instead of taking the camel measurement, you took a cow measurement. Cow measurement is obviously a lot smaller. So again, Rabbi Yochanan says you're chayiv, Shimon ben Elazar says, Ibn Lakish says you're pater. But Orta, Rabbi Yochanan hachi, letzav or hadar bei. Rav Dimi says in the evening, Rabbi Yochanan said that he's chayiv. In the morning, when he woke up, he retracted his opinion and said he is pater. Amar Yosef shaper avad dahadar. Rabbi Yosef says Rabbi Yochanan did a good job by pulling back his opinion. Why? Dahalachaz legamal, taking out a small amount for a camel. It's not fit for the camel. Of course, he's exempt. Amar Lebai says to Rabbi Yosef, Adra, the opposite. His original opinion, when he said he's liable, is much more logical. Because the amount needed for a cow, bottom line is, even though you're taking out for a camel, but the bottom line is it's a meaningful measurement. Once you're taking out the amount of straw needed for a cow, granted I'm not taking it for a cow, I'm taking it for a camel, which needs much more, but my intention doesn't matter. The point is that this pile of straw now is a substantial amount of straw, and therefore I should be liable. Okay, so Alek Yasser Ravin Amar. So now we have a different version of the story. We mixed up the exact thing, like this. Now this is the real way to learn it. Hamotzi Tevin Kimlo Fifar Gamal. Person who takes out straw as much as a cow's mouthful for a camel. For a cow's mouthful for a camel, everyone agrees you're chayiv there. So again, if I take out the amount of straw needed for a cow, even though I'm taking it for a camel, which is too little, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be chayiv because it's a meaningful measurement. Kipli, when do they argue? When a person takes bean straw, the size of a cow's mouth for a cow. Okay? Okay, and the dispute was stated in reverse, meaning Rabbi Yochanan Amar Pat. Rabbi Yochanan says in such a case you're exempt. Rish Lakish Amar Chayiv. Rish Lakish says you're chayiv. Now, what's the reason for that? Rabbi Yochanan. So again, bean straw is something which the camel would eat. So over here, again, I have bean straw, and instead of taking it out for a camel, I take it out for a cow, and I don't take the measurement needed for a camel, which is much more. In which case, of course, it'd be chayiv. I take out a measurement of bean straw, which would be needed for a cow. You with me? Yeah? So one says you're exempt, one says you're chayiv. Why? Rav Yochanan says, at the end of the day, granted, this thing could eat a bean straw. The cow could eat bean straw, but it's not its normal way of eating, and therefore this measurement for a cow is not meaningful, and therefore you didn't take anything out. It's as if you didn't take anything out. Because taking something, eating out of necessity, even if it's like forced eating, right? We all have foods that we don't, the foods that we like and foods that we'll eat, like push come to shove, I'll eat a whatever, fill in the blank. So over here for the cow, it's not the normal food, and they're arguing about if a person takes out the abnormal food for this animal, is that enough to be considered meaningful, in which case they'd be chayiv, okay? Amir can lo fi tala. If a person takes straw, it'd be the amount for a lamb's mouthful. Vatanya kigo greris. We have another brayso that says for straw, it's the amount of a dried fig. And to the Gemara, dried fig and a lamb's mouthful that's actually the same size. Okay, Ali Shum Vali Bitzalim. The last part of the Mishnah said leaves of garlic and leaves of onion, lachim kigo greris, if they're fresh, dried fig size, v'yaveshim klo fi hagidi, and if they're dry, as much as to fit a kid's mouth. And they do not combine because they are not alike in their measurements. Okay, Rav Yosef ben Chanina comes along and says like this. He says that, there are things in this Mishnah which were listed which have large measurements. There are things which have smaller measurements. Smaller measurements are, to be chayiv. The smaller measurements are seen as more chamor, more stringent, because even a small amount, you're going to be chayiv. So he says like this. They don't, something which you need a much larger amount, you need like 2 liters of, whatever, two measurements of, you can't combine with something which you only need a smaller measurement for. But something which you normally would have a small measurement for, you could connect to something which you would normally need, yes, a small measurement for, you could connect to something which you need a larger measurement for. Follow that? In other words, the things which smaller measurements, or where you need a smaller measurement, there it is seen as those substances are much more chamer. Bottom line is, he says there is some, but what comes out of Rav Yosef ben Chanina is, although the Mishnah said they don't combine, he's saying they do combine, they only combine in certain circumstances, okay? The Gemara now is going to ask, but if they have different measurements, they shouldn't be able to combine at all. That's none. We learned this in the Mishnah. What's the Mishnah? The Mishnah says like this elsewhere. This Mishnah said, this is the Mishnah in Maseches Kalim, talking about tuman tara, purity and impurity. Habeged shloshal shlosha. You have a piece of cloth, it is able to contract tuma if it's 3 tvachim by 3 tvachim. Vasak arbal arba. The minimum size for a sack is 4 by 4 tvachim. Or chamisha chamisha. A hide is 5 by 5. Mapats shishal shisha. A mat 6 by 6 tvachim. Tanya. And a brisa was stated about this Mishnah. It said like this: Habeged vasak, hasak va'or, the cloth and the sack and the hide, or va'mapats, the hide and the mat, mitzvah from zeh, they combine with one another. Verm of Shimon matam. Rav Shimon says, why do they all combine over there? Even though they all have different measurements, why do they combine? Because since they are fit to become contaminated through sitting, therefore we combine their measurements in all cases. What that means is as follows: when a person has a saddle, they don't care if their saddle is made of cloth, if their saddle is made of skin, of hide, sack, it doesn't matter. And therefore, since in certain circumstances they could be combined, therefore in all circumstances we'll combine the measurements. But what do we see? From here, time to really meet it's only because of this unique circumstance that in some particular cases they're able to combine. In a scenario like ours where they're not coming together to contaminate through sitting, they won't be able to combine. So why over here with the different foods do we say combine? You don't have that same principle that's saying, since they combine in one case, they'll combine in other cases. They don't combine, they're different foods. So Rava says, Amarava, Hanani Mili, Hachanami, Chazla Dugma. Here too, people do combine. And who combines it? A person who's selling food. You sell food, you want to have sometimes a display. And on the display, you don't just have one type of produce, you have a bunch of produces mixed together, and now you have a substantial mix. And therefore, there are times where the different measurements do come together, and therefore, here too, we would say the measurements do combine in certain circumstances. We will finish the parak, God willing, tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.